Greetings and welcome to the UC San Diego AI Alumni Council webinar series. I'm Sandra Peterson, founding chair of the AI Alumni Council, longtime AI practitioner, and CEO of Sandstone Partners. And today we focus on AI meets life. For context, today's session is part of the Foundation series, which has 3 distinct perspectives every quarter with a focus on how AI is actively shaping our world today. And this month, we open Q2 with the AI Meets Life theme. We curate examples that are not in the daily headlines, yet are surprising and hopefully inspiring in the ways that AI is changing how we live and work. And then in May, we have our student spotlights, surfacing fresh thinking from UCSD's brightest minds. And then in June, we will be featuring ROI case studies. And as an example, last quarter, we covered 10 case studies across a variety of industries and across a variety of functions within the organization. Today, we are going to start with a few updates from co-chair Brian Baumgartner. Then we have 2 industry practitioners and experts in their fields. We'll kick off with Daniel Pifko from WakeCap, who will be talking about AI use in massive construction projects. Then we'll follow with a fully different AI aspect with Nolan Parker from PushPress, talking about AI across the fitness ecosystem. Then we will be, I do just want to note, housekeeping real quick. We do have time for Q&A throughout. So if you do have any questions, if you move your cursor, there will be a little Zoom control that pops up. There will be a Q&A on there. Just press that, enter your questions, and we'll get to those as we go through the topics. We are recording this, and any of the attendees will also get the slides. Then we will be closing up with what's coming up next. And with that, I'll hand it over to Brian for updates.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Sandra. And hi, everyone. So as usual, QR code on the right, scan it, get involved. You can join us on LinkedIn. You can join us on any of these webinars in the future. Sandra just mentioned our core foundational series, and so we'd love to see you at more of those. Just as a heads up, or maybe you've seen it on LinkedIn, Triton Giving Day is a couple weeks away on April 29th. So you'll see a lot of buzz about that as it gets closer and closer. It's a good opportunity to give to the university. One thing that I always say is it doesn't matter if you give $1 or $1 million. Some of the metrics that they track for the university rankings are by engaged number of alumni and how many alumni donate to the Alumni Foundation. So even if you just give $10, it makes a difference to a student and it makes a difference to our rankings. So try to give something and try to participate if you can. We have a survey out, so if you want to, you can't click this link, but if you scan the QR code, you can get to the survey. And if you can fill out the survey, let us know what you want to hear about. That'd be great. We always want to serve the content that you want to hear about. And so the more you tell us, the more we can do that. I already mentioned the LinkedIn group, and of course, we'd love to have you join us there. That's where a lot of the conversation happens in between the webinars, as well as if you want to click on any of these links and not go to the QR code, those links show up there as well. So it's a good way to get that. We're also on Instagram, same thing as the LinkedIn group, maybe more one-directional though. And you can register for our upcoming webinars, join the mailing list. And if you'd like to speak at one of these webinars in the future, please feel free to fill out this short form or get in contact with any of the executive committee who are largely in front of you in the little Hollywood Squares boxes or now in front of you on the screen. Feel free to get in touch with any of us, and we're happy to walk you through what that would take, look over topics, and figure out what the content should be. So as Sandra just showed here, this is our council team. We show this every webinar, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. But if you want to reach out to any of these people or look them up on LinkedIn, they're probably happy to engage with you about our group.
Great. Thank you, Brian. First up, we have Daniel Pifko, Executive Advisor to the CEO at WakeCap. Daniel has over 20 years experience in Silicon Valley. He's founded several companies. He has deep product management DNA, like myself, so we share that, and deep background in mobile computing, artificial intelligence, IoT, computer vision. 5 or 6 years ago, he moved from San Francisco to Saudi Arabia to get involved in the mega construction industry. And over the last decade, the Middle East has become one of the most innovative construction ecosystems in the world. And his company, WakeCap, develops project management hardware, software, and services in Saudi Arabia. So Daniel works alongside mega developments that are rapidly advancing AI-driven project delivery in the Middle East. So today, Daniel's going to cover AI in construction. And Daniel, if I missed anything, you have a very broad background. Please feel free to elaborate. And with that, over to you.
Thanks, Sandra. I really appreciate it. First of all, really happy to be here. Sandra and I have worked together for a bunch of years. I have huge respect for her. And if she's the kind of person that UCSD puts out, then great job, guys. I've had a couple different hats at WakeCap. WakeCap does technology for construction sites to help make them operate safer, better, at a lower cost. My background is in product management. At WakeCap, I've been chief product officer. I was VP of North America when I lived back in the States, and really helped it grow from just a couple of people up to, I think we're up to 300 people, somewhere around there. We use AI in many, many different ways. So we absolutely do use it for internal operations. We use agentic AI for our development. We use it for our customer service. But today I'm going to be focusing on how we use it in a couple of our products that are focused on safety in the construction site. So let's give a quick introduction about WakeCap. Founded in 2017 as a direct result of Dr. Hassan Al-Balawi's PhD research in small machines. 2020, we reached $1 million in annual revenues. About 2023, we acquired a company. As far as we know, it's the first instance where a Saudi Arabian company has acquired a Silicon Valley tech company. And that was a huge milestone, great accelerant for us. And the people we picked up as part of that were phenomenal. We're continuing to grow. We announced 28 million in the Series A last year. We're now, I think we're actually close to 300 employees across Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, KSA, Saudi Arabia, the US, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. We just acquired another company in Brazil. And so we've picked up some customers there. Okay, so it's a really interesting trajectory that we're on. We are focused on very, very large construction projects. Like with any other business, the ideal customer, you need to segment who you're going after, and the needs of very large organizations is different than small, medium enterprises. We are absolutely focused on the very large, the mega projects, the giga projects that you tend to find in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, but certainly other places around the world. We've got a track record now of delivering with Chevron, Apex in South America. Brazil, we got Dow and Petrobras. Around Saudi Arabia itself, some of the biggest names. So Aramco is one of the biggest oil and gas or energy companies. They're doing a ton of construction right now around natural gas and otherwise. Saudi Arabia, in case you haven't been following it, is pumping a bunch of its oil money into entirely new sectors to diversify the economy in the 2030 to 2035 timeframe. Okay? So away from oil, more into things like entertainment. So Qiddiya is an entertainment city where they brought things like, they just opened up a Six Flags. They just opened up a big park and a water park. They have sports boulevards. They have all sorts of things that are opening up around Saudi Arabia to take this money and think 20, 30, 50 years into the future. In terms of WakeCap solutions, I'm not going to talk about all of this today. The two, where we started off was in workforce management, in the connected worker. Where we've moved much more towards is in WakeCap, the site operations. And that's what I'll be talking about today with our product named SiteGuard and with some of our AI-based anti-collision stuff. Where we originally started out was pulling information from a bunch of different sources. So we're most well known for having these smart hard hats. And you see in the back of that hard hat, there's a little orange device. We invented that. It works off of a wireless mesh network that sits on the job site. Literally from day one, we built privacy in. I was involved in the decision of that technology, the choice of that technology, and the decision was based on security, is based on privacy, operations in a construction site where it's rugged, where there's no electricity, where it's way out in uncovered area for electricity or services. And we use it for, like I said, safety and efficiency and productivity. When you're dealing with job sites that have 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 people on them, or each one of those being a package and you put it together into a couple of our sites have 14, 15,000 workers. Just answering the question, how many people are here today? Turns out that's a really difficult question to answer. And if you can answer that, then it's extremely useful for managing the site. And certainly in case of an emergency, if there's a particular person who's missing, or if there's a particular person who has an emergency, they've fallen down, or they've hit on the back of the hard hat, that orange thing is also an SOS button. So if I've fallen, I can press it and the signal goes back to the main 911 operator system that we have there. So that's where we started for the connected worker, but we've since added equipment tags. So we attach those things to heavy machinery and we can find out from vibration if they're in operation, where they are. We've added gas detectors, weather stations. We tie in the access control barriers to the people that we know are already on the job site. Vehicle location, the devices that go underneath the dashboard. So we can do safety tracking for speed and location of big vehicles, small vehicles, have different speed limits on the site, off the site for big vehicles and small vehicles. Then we got into the cameras. And the cameras are really where the AI is being used for our product offering. And it started off with just simple closed circuit TV with CCTV. And then they started to say, hey, can we recognize people not wearing their hard hats? Can we recognize people not wearing their vest, their PPE? And that's where I'm going to be focusing on today. I'm going to be focusing on Site Guard initially and a little bit of the AI anti-collision stuff. And the presentation that I send out at the appendix, there will be a couple more slides in detail on the connected worker. If you're interested, I'm not going to talk about it here. But these solutions are in operations right now in all of the countries that I showed a couple of slides back. I think we're actually on the video AI is in use on sites servicing over 20,000 workers. I think in Saudi Arabia, we have over 60,000 workers right now, several thousand in New York, a couple hundred in Houston, et cetera, et cetera. So now let's get into the heart of it. Now, if you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see there's a guy that's walking around the job site. Right now, I don't know if you saw, but he walked underneath a moving piece of machinery. And then you got the second guy that also walked under the machinery. Now, this is for one of the big energy companies in Saudi Arabia, where they are it's incredibly important to them to spend money on safety, on preventing accidents, on preventing incidents from happening. And one of the things that they look for is things that have a high association with incidents that are going to happen. Walking under heavy machinery is one of those situations. And so we needed a system that would detect when someone is walking under, right? And that's why we really threw the AI at this. Where we ended up, where we are right now, is it's an AI-powered system. It uses VLM, video language modeling, that takes chunks of video, takes 30-second chunks. We upload it into our system. Right now, we're using Gemini and a couple of others to do the recognition on the 30-second chunk. Okay. And ultimately what it puts out is it recognizes when something bad has happened. Now, if you look at that text in the middle, that is generated by the AI. So it says a worker in a gray shirt and a white hard hat walks directly underneath the elevated forks of a stationary forklift, placing themselves in a high-risk position. That was recognized from the video. The text was generated. It had the violation. It had the camera name. It's got a still image. It's got a video clip. And that's uploaded into what's effectively a room full of, it's called the Safety Command Center. It's a room full of 911 style operators to look at, to validate, is it right? Did the AI get it right? That, of course, happens sometimes. And then if so, what's the severity? And then what do we actually do about it? And so if you look down right below, it says the observation was created at a certain date. It was viewed by the SCC operator, this John Ray Fernandez. The status was changed from pending to open. So the person actually said, yep, that's a legitimate problem. We've got to do something about it. And then a little while later, they came back and said, all right, here's what happened. I hopped on the radio. I spoke with the foreman over there. They stopped work. The guy that walked underneath, both the guys actually, that walked underneath the forklift and the guy next to him who didn't stop it from happening got a talking to. It's called a toolbox talk. There are prescribed texts, PDFs, for what you do for various different situations. Walking under heavy machinery, flag people, safety. There's another thing I'm going to show you in a second. So here, what he did was he uploaded the note. He said that there was a stand down. He said there was a toolbox talk. And here's the PDF of the lesson that this crew got as part of the talking to. So first of all, you've got the AI recognition right away, automatically. You've got that happening immediately 24/7 on all the cameras. You've got it consistent. So if somebody is better trained, or if a human being is there, if there's one person who's better trained and one person who's not as well trained, guess what? You're going to have some good results and bad results. Here we've got consistency. The other interesting thing about this too is we put in the context. So number one, it's a construction site. Like with any AI system, you need to have the proper context. So number one, it's a construction site. So just general construction site rules. When there is an activity going on the job site, the company has to write, or some party has to write what's called a JSA, or job safety analysis. So if you're on a jackhammer, you're running a jackhammer, you have to wear eye protection, for example. So all of these things are fed in. The specific site may have rules. In this area, it gets very, very hot. And so if the temperature goes above a certain level and the humidity goes above a certain level, there's an alert sent out that they need to stand down after a certain number of minutes. They have to have water regularly, et cetera, et cetera. So this is put in as context. And then we also have the ability for the people on the site to kind of mess with this and say, all right, so all of that, plus there's some additional context. Like there's a rule saying, I don't know, no bicycle is allowed on the job site. And then the prompt is, I want you to look for certain things. I want you to look for only high priority things. That's the prompt. And of course, the prompt gets better and better. We have a default prompt that goes in that generates this kind of observation. But we also have a play area where people can go in and try new ones. Okay? Now, as the operator sees these things, acts on them, takes action, ranks them as, no, the AI got it wrong, or yep, the AI got it right. That information is fed back into the VLM, is fed back into the AI-based system, so it improves over time. Here's another situation where if you look, draw your eye to over here, right? So there's a rope across here that people are not supposed to cross. You saw one guy just duck under, which is a violation, not as bad, but it's a violation. And this guy right here, he walks over it, which he shouldn't, and sure enough, he trips, right? Now, this catches unsafe behaviors. Fortunately, the guy, not a major injury. But if it turns out that this guy is at a company where you get this kind of behavior over and over and over and over again, it means that company has a persistent and ongoing problem. And it's not the person. In fact, it's rarely just the person. It's usually the subcontractor that needs attention. And so all 100, 200, 800, 1,000 workers that are working for them, they're not getting the right training. This is the kind of thing that we can pick up with our AI. Now, this is an interesting one. This is the guy who just walked downstairs without holding the handrail. Now, all of us here on the call, we're adults. We're like, we don't need a handrail. That's ridiculous, right? I'm not my grandmother. I'm not 80, 90 years old, need a handrail. It turns out, I was amazed by this because I've been in calls with Shell, with their safety crews. I was at another very large chemical company here with a senior VP, and we're talking about all the big things, being under a suspended load, walking in front of vehicles. He's like, okay, can you pick off whether someone is walking downstairs or upstairs without holding the handrail? And I thought he was kidding. It turns out it's not a joke. There's a very, very high association with real accidents. And if you nail that, then it prevents the accidents. The other thing is, it's kind of a canary in the coal mine of this person's approach to safety practices. We were able to pick this off with AI. So I think it was 48 hours after this SVP came to us and said this, we had turned around and found a situation where, in fact, it was this video, and with the proper context and prompt, we could feed it back into these 911 operators. We also have just the basics, which is PPE detection. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see there's a guy who's walking around. He thinks he's just playing around with the truck. He doesn't need a hard hat. He absolutely does need a hard hat. Okay. What I want to get across is a couple of different things, just a little bit more on now that you've seen a few different use cases, what kinds of AI approaches did we use? We ended up with the VLM, or at least we currently have the VLM system. It has some pros and cons. We started off originally with what's called an object-based detection, where we had a camera, we had a view, we used a generic model. We used, I think it was YOLO. And we tried to train the model by feeding it a bunch of these situations, both positives and negatives, and got it to recognize, for example, people not wearing a hard hat. It kind of worked. It was inexpensive. It was easy. But in practical uses, it sucked. It was terrible. It was terrible because if the view changed, the model needed to be trained again. If we wanted to add another use case, like the person walking downstairs, it just couldn't deal with it. It required literally 2 weeks to 3 weeks just of training before you got it in. So it's easy, it's cheap, people are familiar with it, doesn't work for a real construction site. With the VLM, it works really well. It is costly. We're doing various different things to bring down the price. We're talking about sampling the video. We're talking about different models. We're talking about different backend systems. Right now, it's a little bit expensive. And so we're trying to bring that down. But it's incredibly flexible. And in fact, it even catches things that we didn't ask for. We had one thing where there was a guy who was walking up to height, And when you're at height, you're supposed to clip on. And the guy was not clipped on. It caught that, which is great. But on the way, it also said, here's another one, which is the guy is talking on his cell phone on a construction site, which it turns out the AI was right. It's not allowed. We didn't ask for it. And the AI gave it to us. It was phenomenal. So that's our video-based system. Let me go to the next slide here. So now let's talk about the anti-collision system. There's a huge problem on sites where moving machinery hits people. Now here you have this guy in the yellow hard hat right in the middle who's being followed by this heavy machine. This is a really bad situation. There's a flag guy on the right, wasn't paying attention. There's a flag guy way behind. What the hell good does that do? So even with 2 flag people, actually there's a third one off on the right. Even with 3 flag people, this was very much in danger of hitting the guy. 1 in 4 proximity alerts is a near miss. So there are various systems right now where you mount it on the heavy machinery and it looks for things or people around. The problem is with the previous generation, the non-AI generation version, it would use ultrasonic, it would use cameras, but it wasn't really good at recognizing that this is a person versus a post or a fence or a shadow. And the result is a lot of false alarms. And when there are false alarms, it means people get alarm fatigue. They just don't pay attention to it anymore. With us, what we did is we put in a system and we're testing it here where number 1, it recognizes it's a human. And number 2, it's tied into the braking system of the machinery. So it does not depend on the person in the cab recognizing that it's a situation. He may be facing the other way. He may be overloaded with all of the sounds that are going on. He may not hear it because it's beeping all over the place. In this case, we recognize it's a human. We activate the brakes. It wasn't actually that hard to tie into the braking system of the machine. And it stops the machine at a speed that doesn't cause the machine to brake and vibrate and all that kind of stuff. Incredibly powerful anti-collision system. And it only happens because of the onboard AI that recognizes the people and then all the other stuff that's well-worn, tying it into the machine. This is the safety command center that I was talking about. We actually train people. This is a site that supports 18,000 workers on one of our job sites. In front of each of the operators, they have health and safety or HSE trained people. They have all the background in health and safety on job sites. They have all the screens in front, which is like weather stations and cameras and things like that. And then directly in front of them, they have a list of events that are coming in like 911 would. And we have worked with this is Aramco. We have worked with Aramco to develop safety procedures for what happens with different types of events that come in, whether it's from our cameras, the hard hat that we have. When you fall, it comes in here. When there's an SOS button from the hard hat, it comes in here. When the gas detectors I told you about, when they detect hydrogen sulfide, it comes in here. So what to do for all of these different scenarios, we have worked with Aramco to make sure that the situation is handled with the appropriate severity, with the appropriate follow-up actions, with the appropriate closeouts, not just so that the organization can learn, but also so that you have compliance tracking. So at the end of the month, everyone has rules that they need to submit to either Aramco Central or to the government. The health and safety organizations in Saudi Arabia are fantastic. It's called Makosh. It's kind of like OSHA. They pulled from the OSHA, the American organization rules. They pulled from the Australian rules, from the European rules, whatever was the most advanced, they pulled in there. And one of the requirements is compliance tracking, like this kind of stuff. And this makes sure that it's complete. To show you the actual result, actually, month 0, there were almost 0 safety observations, not because the safety issues weren't happening, but because they weren't catching them. And once we put in our system with all of these things in the safety command center, it jumped up. And then you can gradually see over month 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we brought it down to something like brought it down by 94% of the safety observations, which ultimately absolutely 100% result in a reduction in the actual accidents happening. AI lessons learned, I kind of hinted at this earlier. Object detection, low quality, low extensibility, needs retraining, and deals with new views badly. The VLM approach, much higher quality, quickly adapt to new use cases, but very expensive. I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and I'll just leave the screen up for a second in case you want me to pull up a slide.
Thank you so much, Daniel. there's one question and then we'll move on. By the way, this is fascinating. I'm a big fan of computer vision, being former NVIDIA, so I love seeing it in use. Yeah. For your walking detection, how do you manage the delay or latency between when it's detected and notified?
Yeah, so there's a couple of answers. So first of all, under the hood, VLM is not as good as object detection at that. Object detection is much faster if you can get a detection, which it's not great at. So there's like a 30-second delay, and then depending on how much computing power you throw at it, you can actually get a response in another 30 seconds to a minute. So at the very minimum, it's probably like a 1 minute, maximum 1 minute delay before it's picked off and submitted into this command center, unless it's at the end of a 30-second video clip. We're trying different approaches to try to minimize that time. And it's not just for the walking, it's for all of these scenarios, is how do you manage that delay? I think the key is going to be this. We are trying to prevent accidents. You saw most of the use cases we have here are not detecting accidents. They're detecting things that will lead to accidents. And so they tend not to be the kind of thing where something bad happens and you need someone to jump on it right away because those first couple minutes, the golden few minutes after an accident, which is valid, but we're trying to prevent them from happening in the first place.
Excellent. Thank you. And I just want to extrapolate this also to, if you lower the accidents, you lower the cost of this construction, you lower the incidence of legal action, you lower people getting harmed at work. So this being in the ecosystem in the future will be a welcome development. So thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. That's highly valuable. Really appreciate it. And
my pleasure.
If anybody has any questions, if you go to the webinar site, Daniel's LinkedIn profile is there as well. So encourage you to reach out and get in touch with Daniel for further conversations.
Yep, happy to do so. Lots of thoughts on that. The time and money saved is huge. On these oil and gas sites, we think of them as hugely dangerous, terrible places. If there's an accident, like a serious accident on the site, the whole site gets shut down. Worse yet, a death. We have a couple of other things that are non-AI related to track, like when people get a heat exhaustion and try to come back on the site the next day to pick up their hours, we can pick that off. And so send out a team to go get them before they get heat exhaustion on the second day, which is when people tend to face more severe instances. If somebody dies on the site, knock on wood, it should happen, the whole site gets shut down. The head guy, the project director for the site gets called up by all of the major people, and usually they get fired, right? So in addition to the hard cost, there's also the embarrassment, and there's an internal motivation for people to put these in place. The one sad thing I'd say is that oil and gas is actually much better at spending money on safety. Commercial construction, they talk about safety, they don't spend money on safety. Like the allocation of the budget, the project budget to safety is much lower, unfortunately.
Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Very interesting and fascinating. So shifting gears completely, we have Nolan Parker, who is Senior Product Manager at PushPress. He has deep product management expertise across the fitness industry at several companies. He's not only an AI practitioner in his day-to-day job, but he's also, as a product manager, leading feature sets, rolling those feature sets out in the platform at PushPress. His company, PushPress, is a leading platform for gym management, everything from back office to coaching to the member experience that you and I have when we walk into the gym. So he's bringing AI across that whole ecosystem and the experience for gyms and for those of us who are working out at them. He is also an active coach and an athlete. I believe, Nolan, you were in the World Open for CrossFit competition recently.
Yeah, we just wrapped up the CrossFit Open.
Fantastic. I can't imagine. That's intense. He's also a former gym owner, so he understands the whole ecosystem of fitness. And today he's going to share how AI is affecting and is getting into the fitness ecosystem. So Nolan, again, if I left something out that's important, please, I encourage you to add, and I will turn it over to you.
Oh, that's perfect. That was a lovely intro. Thank you. Guys, super excited to chat today. And if anything comes up, if you have questions, if you want to shout stuff out during the chat, we can play a little jazz and I'm happy to take it. anywhere it needs to go. But I'm really excited. I'm gonna talk a little bit about a recent feature that I developed here at PushPress. But I'll start off with a little intro about the company and what we're seeing and how the world of SaaS is changing a little bit for everyone really in this age of AI, and how we're kind of trying to ride that wave here at PushPress. So jumping in, I want to talk about PushPress real quick. A quick intro on the company. We are a gym management software. We raised Series B at the end of 2024, and we really are scaling up, focused initially on CrossFit, functional fitness, boot camps, those types of things, and expanding into adjacent verticals, getting into the martial arts space, yoga, spin, that type of thing. So obviously, fitness is a trend is continuing to grow, and there's AI impacting it from all different angles, but we're really actually focused on the business owner. We're focused on usually a single gym owner who has maybe one location, maybe two or three tops, but really they have to wear all the hats. They don't have a full team of staff. They're like one-man show. They have a lot of part-time coaches, and they have to do the books. They have to do the coaching. They have to make sure the bathroom's clean. And so for them, having the right software and the right tool that can help them get their day-to-day done and their week-to-week done, there's just so much opportunity. And so we aim to solve problems for them from a lot of different angles. And of course, I've been in the seat. I know these pain points, and I know how much I struggle and how much time I can spend on the things that I'm not an expert in, when really what I want to be doing each day is spending time with my members, and wanted to develop some features that could help enable that. So zooming out to a bit of the industry shift that we're seeing with business software, we're really in this phase right now of transitioning from system of record. Some people leapfrogging right to an agentic system, but right now a lot of what we're focused on is becoming a system of action. How do the tools that we create help actually complete the job to be done? Whether there's a user in seat just checking off, hey, I want you to go do this thing for me, but the AI is really helping accelerate either the context or the knowledge sharing, or pulling information that was previously disparate. So just another slide kind of layering that in. In the old way, it was like you had to build a feature for everything when you wanted to put it in the platform, right? Our reporting is an example of this. Coaches want every different variation and version of reporting out there, but Gym A does it this way, Gym B does it this way, so now you have to make two reports. And what AI is letting us do is actually start to cater that to the user. We can adjust the interface, they can query the system and start to ask the questions that they want to know the answers to, and we don't have to build a standardized report for everyone. So what's that helping us do? That's helping us basically increase value. Everything we're doing across the board, the more effort a human puts in, the more value they're able to get by engaging with our tool. So really there are three things that we focus on when it comes to using AI in the product. One is this going to help the gym grow their revenue? Is it going to save the gym owner or their coach's time? Or is it going to help deliver a better member experience? And we're even starting to rethink how we package and price around this as we shift towards this team of assistants, right? These AI assistants who help you do your sales, help you do your coaching. And gym owners are telling us that this is really something that they want. So when you go to a fitness class next time, keep in mind that these people are probably having to go and do 10 other jobs once they get done coaching. And so they're really looking for help in this space. And I'm going to show you how we try to close the gap on one of these specific problems in this upcoming feature. Here's one more illustration, just talking a little bit about how you can expand a coach's capability, a gym owner's capability. So the image on the left shows a little bit about what a gym owner could do today, right? They have some serious weaknesses, right? They're not very technology and data literate. They don't necessarily know how to run their finances. And so when you layer on, you take an average gym, but you give them AI with a system of action, you have tools that can help them extend and accelerate their reach in these different areas. Now you've seriously leveled up this gym owner who just needs to have a little bit of the gung-ho and put the effort in, but the tool is able to take care of some of these things that they maybe either didn't know how to do or just didn't have the bandwidth to do before. And ultimately, what we're trying to do across all these different verticals is just how do we increase the average revenue that we see? We have a ton of data around how gyms are performing, what success looks like, and we're looking to raise the bar across the board when it comes to driving revenue for them. So here's the feature that I'm going to highlight today. It's called Member Intel. And this is very near and dear to me because this solves a huge problem that I experience in my own life as I do what I'm actually about to do today, which is wrap up a webinar and then go coach the 4:30 p.m. class here at Coda CrossFit in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I want to talk about what people experience when they walk into the gym, right? A lot of people, they show up and like when no one in the gym knows who you are, it can be a lonely experience. You show up to a fitness class and it feels like everyone's already friends. They're all buddy, they're high-fiving. And you're just like, I'm just here trying to get in shape. I haven't been to the gym in a while and I'm just trying to get in the mix of things. And comparing that to like, what is an elevated experience where you walk in the front door and Coach Nolan's like, hey guys, what's going on? It's great to see you today, Sandra. Let me show you around. Let me introduce you to some folks. And one thing that I want to highlight is we have these individual gym owners who are stretched so thin, but the best gyms, the best owners, they really are doing this. It takes a lot of time, organization, and effort. But ultimately what they do is they go out of their way to make sure that these people have an amazing experience. What's tough is if you're trying to replicate and scale that across your staff who maybe are less informed, less trained, or just simply don't have the time to do all that research and prep. So what I was looking at was how do I solve a problem for gym owners that's very real and I keep hearing about it. And it's like, there are so many different things that you could look at in a system, right? You can look at how someone's attendance has been. You can look at any notes that have been left on them. You can look at their, are they checking in? Are they social on the app? Are they engaging with the tooling? And in the system of record approach, you had to go one by one and look at all the different basically areas of the product if you wanted to learn about a member. And then you extrapolate that and you go to, okay, what if I have 8 or 10 or 20 people in my class? Am I realistically going to be able to go retrieve all this information? What I really like about what we built is we started to move in a direction that AI is so well suited for, right? It's able to look at a broad set of data and extract the things that are relevant. Out of all these people and all the different things I could have looked at, there's probably only 3 things that might be relevant for me today when I go to coach my 4:30 class. So member intel is born. And what was awesome was like, I kind of designed out this experience in the fall of last year and we just launched it a couple of weeks ago. But basically this thought of, well, what if before class, I got a notification of, hey, there's some intel available for you. And I could just quickly get a download of information. So started thinking about all the things like, what would I want to know about people before class? And what do the best gym owners look for and do? So maybe it's learning about Quinn and how she's trying to gain muscle before her triathlon. It's calling out people who are new, right? I should be looking out for these faces and names. Maybe Paul's new to the gym. He's going to need to be shown around. He's going to need to know where the bathrooms are and where the weights are and how does class run. And then on the other side, we have Jessica, she's been coming for a little bit. She's learning more about the community. But maybe my goal today is like she's on her free trial and I'm trying to close her. And I need to get her sold on a membership. And so that's like my main mission. When I see Jessica today, I want to check in, see how she's doing, but I'm trying to close the deal. We look at Jen. She hasn't been into the gym lately. How do I know to look for her unless I've been paying attention and tracking her attendance? And then, of course, Nick comes in. He has a bad knee. He's going to need some modifications and adjustment to his group exercise class today. And finally, celebrating people. I think this is one of the most important ones. If you have been a part of a fitness community or any community really, it doesn't have to be even in the gym, but when you celebrate these moments with someone, when you call out that it's Tim's birthday or John's anniversary and you give them a pat on the back and everyone can cheer, you create this really special touch point. And I want to do this one because it's an amazing thing to do for these individuals and to celebrate and to help gyms recognize. And also that's also going to keep these people coming back. We have very clear data showing how when they hit certain attendance thresholds, their churn goes way down. So we're helping put money back into the gym owner's pocket when we can create more touch points for their coaches and members. So taking this from vision to reality, we had a lot of questions to ask ourselves. And they really land in the camp of, I always think about the product triad of product design and engineering working together. So I'm always asking as the product manager, what's valuable? What do coaches actually want to hear about? Working with my designer on what's usable, like how do we actually get the attention? What's the right amount of things to show? What's the best way to show it to the users? And then for engineering, of course, what's technically possible? I could design this amazing experience, but if we can't pull it off, it's all for naught. So where we spent a lot of time was on building kind of the harness of how do we develop this. So we defined what were our data inputs that we wanted to start with in our database and basically put together the JSON input that's going to be delivered to the LLM model. We played around with a lot of different models, and ultimately we used a tool called Brain Trust that allowed us to be flexible in which model we selected. What we were able to realize is we don't have to be on the latest and greatest. We don't have to be on Opus 4.6 to get the results we need. We were able to go with kind of earlier GPT models that were fast, they're simple. We got a lot better outputs when we put the right inputs and had the right training data rather than relying on the AI to do like super heavy lifting with the most expensive models. Evals became really important here. I did a combination of using real examples and also using AI to help me generate like what are all the different scenarios of inputs that we want to show and train this AI on. So I would create conditions of, okay, let's come up with 5 different injury situations. And here's what we would present. Here's what will show up in the JSON input. And here's also what we would expect the output to be. So I worked in this tool Brain Trust to develop a bunch of different evals and then also built a scoring model around that allowed me to see how well based on the output is this actually performing. So before we even had to go test this in the real world, we were able to run through a bunch of training scenarios of this data input leads to this output, and here's what we expect to see. But we had to get in beta testing because AI can misbehave. We wanted to do a longer gestation period to make sure that what we were putting out into the world was actually useful and valuable. So I'll run you through a couple examples of like where while we were in beta, we had to calibrate. So one situation was around drop-ins. People wanted to call out the difference between someone who's just traveling and dropping into their gym versus someone who's a legitimately interested new member. It's someone you're going to make $20 off of once versus someone who's going to potentially represent thousands of dollars. It's not that you don't want to give a great experience to that drop-in, but you want to give different care and attention to this person who really just is going to need it and you're going to be trying to close them. So this was a great call. Like it showed us something that we missed when it came to our data inputs. So like our calibration for that's like, oh, we need to actually include the plan data that this person's on and be able to feed that in. So that way the AI knows this person's bought the drop-in pass. They're not on a free trial as a new member, being able to differentiate that out. This was a really fun one. So this was an AI hallucinating that this person lost 30 pounds on GLP-1 drugs. And it was actually, I realized, using one of the training examples that I had provided. So this is a really good call out that when you're training data and you're building out evals, you need to explicitly tell the AI what it's allowed to do and not do. And putting up the guardrails is a key piece of developing any AI feature that you're going to give some leash and some runway to. So one of my examples had GLP-1 drugs. And of course, in the beta testing, this came up probably 5-10 times of people reaching out to me. They're like, hey, I don't think I've ever made a note about so-and-so being on GLP-1s. And obviously that's not something that you want to, say falsely. So really good learning there about how we could explicitly train the AI to not say that sort of thing. Another situation, this guy called out that it's inaccurate stating injury notes on member accounts that don't actually have those injuries. And what we realized is we didn't put a context window on how far we let the AI look. So it turned out in this example that the 2 members that he was referring to that he said didn't have injuries actually had injuries from years ago in the past. And so we didn't tell the AI, look at this certain context window when you go to retrieve information, but it actually was pulling back from many years ago. So obviously the injuries were no longer relevant, but this is a situation where we're trying to still calibrate and say, well, what is a relevant context window? If it's something, that is relevant from 5 years ago, maybe I do have a steel hip and I'm not able to do certain movements, like that's always going to be relevant for me versus something that's like maybe a much more shorter time frame. And then finally, we played around a lot with just where do we show things in the app? How do we actually make them relevant? And one thing we realized is that we didn't expose this in the UI on each class. You had to actually click into the class to see. And so people were really like, clicking into every single class we noticed. And they're like, where does this one have Intel? Does this one have Intel? And that led us to some interesting insights around how we can better make this usable and also do some roll up of the Intel so that gym owners can see, okay, this is all the things that are going to happen in the gym today. So a lot of really awesome learnings. I'm happy to take this anywhere, see how we're doing on time. I think we're actually getting close. So be at a good stopping point too.
We're really good on time. This is very interesting. Thank you, by the way. One question, and for those of you who have questions, if you move your cursor, Zoom pops up a bar, click Q&A. Feel free to enter your questions. But the first question is, in terms of guardrails for hallucinations, how did you approach implementing those?
Yeah, definitely. I found it was easier to say what not to do than what to do. And so we want AI to actually take its liberty and notice things that it thinks are interesting. So we relied a lot on the training inputs to say what to do. So we gave it a bunch of examples, right? We had about 30 different examples of if we show you this, this is what we expect to get from an output. And then we just had to explicitly say, don't in any case use this. This is similar to how maybe you've like set up the memory files when you use ChatGPT or Claude, right? You say like, Sandra hates it when you use M dashes in her emails. Like, don't ever do that. And it's the same when we're training this model. We're just giving it something very specific that we want it to do or not do.
In terms of the LLM that you use, have you been switching out? You mentioned you're using different models, lighter models. Are you switching those out on the back end on the fly? Are you doing that with releases? How does that dynamically work when you're building one of the frontier models into your solution?
Yeah, definitely. So we're relying on third-party tooling for this that does allow for that easy remove and replace. The one we started with is called Brain Trust. We're looking at maybe moving to a different one called Prompt Fu, like Kung Fu, but Prompt Fu, that allows for the insertion of different models. This is actually something that we're looking at across the platform to be able to insert even for different situations. So outside of this member intel feature, we're building more of a general AI assistant. And there are some jobs that we really want to use higher end models. So we're building an AI reporting feature that lets you query your own data and say, what do my financials look like this month? Which members are most at risk of churn, things like that. We want to use, a higher standard model. So putting that in the harness and just being able to say, in this situation, use this model, in that situation, use that model.
Okay, excellent. Anyone else have any questions? Any more questions? Brian, Daniel, any of our attendees?
This is fascinating. I'm wondering if you can use, it seems like a lot of this works on data that you're collecting and inferring stuff from the data.
Yep.
In a gym, right? You're in there, you're involved, you're touching, you're teaching, you're training, you're like pointing, like that's where a lot of the information about what's going on with your clients happens. Have you thought about using AI to source, like to turn that into data that goes into the system? Maybe listening to your microphone saying, hey, Daniel has a gamey leg, he needs to adjust the positions, and then that just gets fed into your data.
Yeah, I actually love that watching your presentation, Daniel. Like the one
leg?
thing that we haven't run into. What's that?
My gamey leg?
Oh, no. You're just the video context, right? And how you can identify risk, right? It's almost the same situation in the gym, right? If you have cameras in there, I think we'll have to like rely on like what gyms actually have, right? Because we are dealing with this like kind of small business owner usually. And so there's like the privacy side of like, do they want, like a lot of them might have cameras in the gym, but who's actually doing the processing of all that raw data and what did you want to extract from that? One thing we're going to try to lean into next is just better capture of notes from the coach. And so I'm working on like a voice notes capture that provides the relevant context and mapping. So that way after class, I can get a notification and just quickly leave a note and say, here are the 3 things that I want to call out from class today, and starting to get smarter with that. But the video and even just being able to like listen into class would be super useful.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Nolan. That was very helpful. And I can't wait till every time I walk into the gym, I get a warm welcome and really appropriate motivation for that day and that moment. I'm just going to close up quickly covering what's next. In April, we have another event. AI Perspectives is our series that is very specific to an industry or a topic or a specific technology as opposed to a real world application. Next week, we'll be talking about legal and ethical challenges associated with developing and deploying AI. This is a huge topic. The whole legal industry is being impacted massively, like most of them, but I think legal is right up there with high compliance industries. Of course, Triton Giving Day later this month. And then in May, we have our Student Spotlight series. Last time we had 3 students presenting their projects and their work. We might have more this time. I try to get 4. We curate real world applications that they're working on. And then we do have a workshop coming up. I'm sorry, I don't have a date for it, but it's AI optimized career strategies. And if you join the LinkedIn group, you'll see it posted there as soon as we have a date. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Nolan. Thank you all for attending, and we look forward to the next one.